So the long awaited period. So yeah, staring at JavaScript. Hmm. Okay. So let's dig in. So right. So JavaScript. Yes, when we actually started classes, when I was introducing the whole web development um, structure, so we talked about HTML being the building block, CSS being the styling, and then we talked about interactiveness for JavaScript. Yes. Now, from our experience with the project so far, you could see that, yeah, there was a point we did an FAQ, yeah, an FAQ stuff for the Fin suite, yeah, and then there was also a slider that we were supposed to, yeah, work on, but we could not do that. We could only just do what we could because um, there was no interactiveness. Like just HTML and CSS. The whole JavaScript part was just not there. So JavaScript is an important tool that has actually come to stay. So from my screen, it said what's JavaScript? It's a scripting or programming language that allows you to implement complex features on web pages. So every time a web page does more than just sit there and display static information for you to look at. Yeah, I didn't read that well. So that's supposed to be one sentence. So it allows you to implement complex features on web pages. So we talked about static websites and static, yeah, static websites and dynamic websites. So static websites just have images and text. And then dynamic websites are things that they keep changing. And how do you make this change? JavaScript is doing magic behind the scenes. So you want to sign up. You want to sign up on Facebook. So it depends on the language that is being used. In early times, it was the sequence was HTML, CSS, PHP. PHP is also a scripting language, or yeah, it's a programming language too. So that was the sequence. So you had to learn HTML, CSS, and then PHP. Like JavaScript was not that popular then. So this is talking about 2016, 2017, yeah, 2018. So JavaScript was not that popular. But in recent times, sequence now changed. You're now either choosing, do you want to go PHP or do you want to go Python? Do you want to go JavaScript? So it depends on what you want to use to actually write. So these are programming languages. So it just depends on what your preference is. And now the whole thing with PHP then was that you actually needed an environment for you to work with PHP. So you had to do this. You had to create like a server where you can actually serve your pages. It's not like our own live server now that you have to do. Yeah. Sorry about that. So back to what I was. To actually run PHP. It's using you can run JavaScript with your browser, you can test it with your browser. You don't really need an environment for that to actually work. So that was what happened. Can you guys hear me now? I believe so. Can you guys hear me? Yes. Okay, okay, thank you so much. So like I have on my screen to display timely content updates. So something like Twitter now, and you go there, the moment you just keep your eyes, you see new stuff has come in. So it's JavaScript doing something behind the scene. You see maps that are interactive, like you can you can actually click on a particular you can click on a particular place and then something happens. So that is still JavaScript. When you talk about 2D, 3D graphics, scrolling of videos and all of that, JavaScript is involved. So this is the third layer of the cake of standard web development. So it's like a sequence. You learn HTML, learn CSS, and then you learn how to make it interactive. So that's what happens. So a few other things about Java. It's a programming language like we know, and then it's also easy to learn it. Even though it has its specs too. So, but as a developer, yeah, well, if you don't get challenges, you won't get better. So keep learning new things as you get as challenging as it is, you keep learning on the go. All right. So what can JavaScript do? JavaScript can sorry about this. So JavaScript can change HTML content. So this is actually JavaScript can change HTML content. It can change HTML attributes. It can change HTML style. It can hide HTML elements. It can show HTML elements. So we're actually going to see how see how these things work so that yeah we understand what is going on. All right, so I need to just open a blank page. Actually need to I want to show you what you can actually do with JavaScript. Sorry. So all right. So on our screen here, I've opened my developer tools. And then you notice that this element, I hope we can actually see this. So we have this element section. This element section is, I don't know where to give it. So this element section, we get to see each, what do they call it? Each element here. When you hover on it, it actually shows you which is which is what. So it just shows you all of that. Now, did you know that we can also use this section, this console? Now, this console section, with this console section, you can actually test out your JavaScript. You can actually do a whole lot of things inside here, just to be clear on things. So we're going to see how this works, how we can use JavaScript to do a whole lot of things. I'm going to use this. Then I'm clearing this. So this is actually to clear this section here, this first icon here. So I'm going to so the first thing here. I don't know where that is. So the first thing here is JavaScript can change HTML content. So let's use JavaScript now to change HTML content. So now JavaScript looks at your web page and it sees it like a document. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
All right. So it looks at this like a document. And now with that document, you're able to select different sections or different items. The same way we have classes and IDs, you're able to apply JavaScript to pick those IDs and classes and then use them to effect changes on your page. So changing HTML content. Now we have this content, learn to code. We can change this content into whatever we want it to be using JavaScript. How do we do that? So I am looking at this section and I am seeing that for me to get this learn to code, it has a class here. Now this class is what? Learn to code H1. So I'm copying that class now. I am going to my console. I am doing remember I told you JavaScript sees this thing like it's a document. So I'm going to call a document dot a document object. So this is a document. It is actually an object. We'll learn about objects. So document dot. Now there are two ways we are trying to select this learn to code on our page because you need to select an item. The same way you're doing your CSS. When you want to style out something, you actually you do this what do they call it? You pick a class and then you're able to style that particular section. So instead of CSS now. So we're doing a document and then we have to do either a get element by ID. If you're using get element by ID, that means, okay, there are two ways of doing this. So let me just select this. So get element by ID. Now, as it says, as the name implies, you're trying to get an element using the ID. Now, if you check this learn to code, you see I'm hovering on it, and it's pointing to this particular learn. It's pointing to that element. You see that this has a class. It doesn't have an ID. If we had an ID here, we can use get element by ID, and that will work. Let me just add an ID so that we get the picture. So, yeah. This is actually not where you'll be doing we're just testing something out. This is not where you'll be doing it. So this is just for test. So let's call this tests. Yeah, calling it test code. All right, so test code. So here, get element by ID. You now need to pass in the name of the ID now. So the name of the ID was what? Test. Okay. So you're using single. So this thing can actually accept single. And if you notice, I'm using a single quote here, and I'm closing with a single quote here. So if you're starting with single, you can either take single or double quote. So you can either take single or double quote. So now we're using single quotes. That means we have to end single quotes. So I have test code here. Now, this test code, I am not adding the hash this thing in front of it or the dots because this is an ID. So because it's an ID, it understands that there's no need to add an hash or put a dot. I'll explain that shortly. So if I press enter now, you see it brings out this code. So I'm able to select this using the ID. So this is a H1, it has this class, it has this ID, and then it's pointing to this. I don't know if we get this picture that I'm painting. So the document is using get element by ID. This is like a selective, it's like using a selection element. So you're writing this, and then you're passing the ID of the element, and then it's bringing it out. So we want to actually change content here. So we are doing get element by ID. And then there is something called inner HT. Okay, is equals to okay. Did we see what happened there? Did someone see what happened there? Yeah. So I was able to change this content here using what? Using JavaScript. Yes. So notice that I am using the ID here. I am using the ID here, and I am picking the inner HTML. The inner HTML is the content, this content that is inside here. So I'm using this I'm picking the inner HTML, and I'm saying, let it be equals to hello. So that is what is happening. That is what is happening here. Yes. Simple. So let's hear you out.
Okay, thank you very much, Ogochukwu. What I'm actually surprised with is it possible to change the content of another person's website just the way you've done right now? I believe this is W3 school and you just like change the content on their website. Is it possible?
Okay. So like I said, this is actually test. It's just a test. If I reload this page,
Yeah.
if I reload this page, it returns to its normal. So let's just get this first. So that if I reload this page now, I'm going to use the class instead of an ID. So let's just understand that this gets element by ID. So I'm still going to answer what? Yes. It don't affect, yeah, it will not affect. This is just test. So I'm going to explain it one after the other, but let's just get that we can use get elements by ID. Yeah, we can use get element by ID, and then you need to target the inner HTML, and then you need to equate, use an equals to, and then yeah, change it. Change it to hello. Yes. All right. So I am going to reload this page. So I believe we understand this now. I'm going to reload this page. And I would use, let me come back here. I still want to select this length code. So it doesn't have an ID. So I gave it my own ID because I wanted to use get element by ID. So now I want to use the class. So you see that the whole CSS being tied up into the whole HTML, CSS, and JavaScript flow. So we are going to actually see why you have to use a dot, why you have to use an hash, and then how it all plays out even in your JavaScript too. So I'm copying this class now. I selected on it and highlighted. So I'm coming to my console. I am doing a document. Use get elements by ID. But now I'm going to use a query selector. Now, query selector allows you to use either an ID or a class. Select an element. If you're using get element by ID, you cannot use a class. So here, I'm going to put my single quotes or double quotes. Any of them works, depending on your preference. So document.query selector, and I'm going to do a dot and paste my class length code. So this is it. So because it is a class, I'm using a dot. If it were an ID and I'm still using query selector, it now allows you to, yeah. So if I'm using query selector, it allows you to use either the dot or the hash. So if it's an ID, this will be an hash instead of a dot. So the same way with CSS. So query selector, if I press enter now, it now still gives me this same item. And then I use my top arrow key to bring back the previous code that I did. And then I'm doing a dot inner HTML. And I'm doing equals I. Okay, so do we get that point? We understand that. In the charts. Yeah. All right. So you can use JavaScript to change HTML. Yeah, HTML content. So we can also you can also use it to change HTML attributes. I hope this is not too far away. It's far away. Okay, stop being jealous. All right. So you can change the HTML attributes. Remember that attributes are things that give you additional, yeah, it helps you to add additional information So something like your class, your style, you can use it to change all of that. Then let's see, where do we have an image? Need an image. Need an image. Okay, so let's see. Okay, so let me just do this. Let me go to GitHub. Let me just log out. Okay, okay. So we have this image here. So I'm inspecting and I'm touching the lives of different people's website, like what's his name? Simple Sausage. That's whether you can change somebody's website. If it's like that, people will be ruining people's websites. Trying to get something. Yeah, you can get both classes and I need that. Sir. Sorry, I just need somewhere that will get information. It's not just coming to my head. Let me just. All right. So I am inspecting. Don't mind, forget the weird face. So this is my image, and I have a class. This is built with Bootstrap, so you can see image fluid, you can see dev small image here. So I'm going to use this. I'm going to use this dev small image. I'm going to select this image. I'm going to select this image, and I'm actually going to change the SRC attributes. So SRC here is an attribute because I'm able to pass in information. I'm able to change this image using this SRC. So I want to select this image here. So let me get this dev small image. HTML and CSS, that's what you want to do. So, okay, I have something here. So, document dot query selector. And then I am passing a dot and I'm pasting this dev small image. I am closing this. Okay, so I'm able to pick this guy, which is my image here. But I want to change the SRC. So SRC. Okay. So I have selected this image and I'm doing a dot .src. So the dot .src is pointing to this image, this in here. Like it's pointing to where the image is. So this is inside my static, inside my media, inside, yeah. So this is pointing me to the link per se. So I just need to get another image. So let me just look for an image online. Okay. So All right, so let me copy image. Copy image address. So I copied the image address and I am saying the SRC is equals to, I open my quotes, I paste this, and do this. I press enter. Confirm this. Okay. It's okay. Why? So on my web page, that's so funny. I now have instead of my image here, I now have Lion King showing. This is Simba, right? Simba showing here. So I'm able to change the SRC here using JavaScript. So I selected this, and then I'm pointing to the source, the SRC. Then I'm able to change it by passing the link to the image here. So I believe we understand that, right? Yeah. So you can also do this. You can change the SRC using JavaScript. Then you can change HTML styles using JavaScript. So let's look at that. So let's come back to high merits. And then we want merits. We want this merits to be a different color. So let's see. So inside our console, remember that we had this query selector. Okay, so I'm coming for questions. So let's just run through all of them. So document.query selector. Remember that we were able to select this using document.query selector, and then we are passing the name of the class, which is learn to code H1. Now we want to change the color. Let's say the color of this. So what do we do? So we can say dots. So at the end of the bracket, we are doing a dot style. So you want to get this style dot color. So color is equals to what? Let's say yellow. So we're able to change the color of this text using, we are targeting the style attributes, and inside the style attributes, we are now targeting the color. We are targeting the color, and then we are changing the color to whatever color that we want to use for that particular element. All right, so whether it's tortoise or cockroach yellow, so those are just colors. So you're able to use JavaScript to change colors. You can also change the font size. So font size. Font size. Equals to 12 pixels. So very tiny. So there's a very tiny high merit. Yeah. So you're able to do that using, now notice if we're using the normal CSS, we would have done font dash size. But here now, because there are two words, so you're doing a font and then you're using camel case instead. So font size equals to this. So you're able to do this using JavaScript. All right. Let's see. So we can change style, HTML style using that. We can also hide. We can hide elements. Let's see, what are we going to hide? Let's hide this HTML. So So let's just add our own. Let's add our class ID. So class is equals to, well, let me just do an ID. So gets the picture over time. So ID is equals to, let's say, HTML text. Okay, so we'll come to our console. We are doing a document.query selector. Remember, we use an ID, so we are doing an hash. And then we are doing a HTML text. And we are closing this. So we're able to select this now. So if I just press my up arrow key, brings the last command that I did, and then we are now doing a dot style dot display. Okay, it's equals to none. Okay, this should actually be a string. So the reason I am doing this, why this thing is inside quotes, this is a string. Now in JavaScript, you put strings inside quotes, quotation marks like this, single or double quotes. Yeah, you do that. So if I press enter now, see it hides that HTML. This text. Do we see that? Do we see that happen? So I hope we actually saw that. So I am targeting the style here. So because display is a style property. So yeah. So we have you're targeting the style, which is an attribute. And then inside the style now you have the display property. So the display property now, you're now setting it to have a value of none. So if we want to show now, we will now remember in your CSS, if you want to hide a section, you just do a display of none. Same thing works here. So display of none. If you want to do if you want it to show up, you do a display of block. Display block. So we want to show now, so that's what we are doing here. So display block brings it back. So we get that. I've touched this. I've touched 5 of them. So you can hide, you can show, you can do a whole lot of things here. So JavaScript is different from Java. We use Java for mainly for mobile app development, and it's actually different from the syntax is different. The people that actually created it, they are just different persons. So JavaScript is different from Java, just so you have that at the back of your mind. All right, so merit, no, not merit. Why? Okay, so not job, yeah, not job. Question. No, why?
Good morning. Please, I want to ask, did you dream about merit last night?
Ask, go straight to you. So leave that.
Okay, my question is, when you were selecting the attribute for the image, let's say I want to select an attribute for a link. So I select the href. And then I want to hide a link inside another link. How would I do that? Like those websites I used to have pop-up ads, that when you tap on the link, it takes you to another website. So how do I achieve something like that?
Okay, so I think I need you to go over the question again. Can you go over it again? Did you hear me?
Okay, yeah, I can hear you. I said when selecting an attribute, like you mentioned before, and then you selected the source for the image. So let's say I want to select the href for a link.
Okay.
And then I want to change that href to another link.
Yes.
And the previous one, I want that previous one to be showing, and the new one I'm changing it to not show. But when they tap on the previous one, it will take them to the new link that I changed. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? It's like they're hiding a link inside another link. But when they see the link, it will be I don't know, but shall you understand what I'm trying to say now?
Okay, let me see if I can
Okay.
actually replicate. Let me replicate what you're trying to say.
Okay.
So we edit this, edit as HTML. Yes. So just below here, I'm just going to do I'm just going to do a div. Now inside this div, I'm just going to do a href equals to let me just right. Okay, so let me just put W3 school here. Where do I have that? Okay, so yeah, this is my W3. So I have this is an anchor link, yes, which is this. And I want to add a I want to add a class here. We edit as HTML. Okay, yeah. So I want to add a class here. Now this class will just be, let's say W3 school link on okay. So W3 school link, that's what I called it. So I want to change. It actually has my this in here, a link to my portfolio. And then I want to now change it so that it redirects to W3 school instead of what is here. So if I click this, it takes you to this. So what we want to do is we want to change this. So I'm coming here now and I am clearing this and I'm doing a document dot query selector. Okay, and inside that I'm actually doing the W3 school link. Close this up. So it now gives you, so this is it. So I want to change this href. I want to, I want to do this. I want to target the href, which is pointing to this. And then I am saying, instead of that, let's go to their website. So since that is what is actually there. So if I do this and I press enter, now if I hover here, you see, instead of what we had before, we have it going to a W3 school. So I'm clicking on this, it takes me to this. So you can actually change the href so that even if initially it was set with something else, now it has changed to what it is. So before, what we had here was a link to my okay. So not job. Is that not what you actually meant? Or is it something different?
It's something kind of different. You know those websites like Net Niger. So when you want to download, when you want to download, or maybe you want to go to the next page and then you tap on a link, it will take you a website, like an ad website you get. But when you go back and then you tap on that same link, the link will take you to the correct page.
That's quite complex.
Okay.
Yeah, that is quite complex.
Okay.
So let's not start going there. Even me, I thought it's just changing using JavaScript to just change the href. Yeah. Yeah, I get that.
Okay, no, it's not that one. At least that one is if changing the href is same thing as changing the src. So it's basically almost the same thing. This
Yes.
one I'm talking about is more complex and difficult. Yeah, I get.
Yeah. For those people for people that download anime, where you just go to download this and then it's taking you to a different site. You have to sometimes it will even take your money. So it's that funny and crazy. So yeah, but that is actually complex. That is I don't want people to let people not get lost here, actually. Okay, so we've talked about this. I believe we all understand. Yeah, we all understand this. Actually, we all understand how we can do all of this with JavaScript. So the next thing to talk about now is where do you put your JavaScript? Where do you put your JavaScript? So let me expand this. I'll still exit it. So in HTML, JavaScript code is inserted between script tags. So when we're talking about CSS, we're saying you have internal CSS, you have external CSS, you have inline CSS. So with JavaScript, you almost have something similar. You can actually write JavaScript because if you check the Bootstrap page that we were working on, you notice that for that slider to work, we actually had to inject JavaScript into it. Now that JavaScript was an internal JavaScript because we had to add it inside our HTML document. Same place, inside our HTML document, but just before the body tag. So that is like internal JavaScript. Now, if you have a file that has a .js, CSS is .css That's the extension I'm talking about now. HTML.html. JavaScript, you have a JavaScript, it will have a .js. Now, when you have something like that, that is an external JavaScript. So we're actually going to touch that, and then we'll explain what really happens. So you can place the scripts that in the head or in the body. So the same way we have internal and external CSS, we also have the same for JavaScript. So why would you use an external JavaScript instead of internal? It's still the same way. It's still the same way that we look at CSS. Imagine you writing your CSS inside the same HTML document. That will make it your work to be very crowded and very untidy, actually. So you want to actually you want to separate consents. So like you see here, placing script in external files has some advantages. So it helps to separate HTML and your JavaScript code. So it makes it look better. It also makes HTML and JavaScript easier to read. So I'm actually going to show us how these things work so that you get to understand what is really happening. So when you have cached JavaScript files, they actually speed up your page load. So you don't have to like fetch it again or get that JavaScript to reload your page. And you know that it's actually your page is kind of slower if you don't have, if you have to wait for internet to now fetch to try and go to CDN and get Bootstrap link and then load this thing up. So if you have your JavaScript there that is saved on your browser, your page can actually load faster. So I am actually going to go back. I'm opening my VS Code. Okay. So I need to create a new folder. Now this is documents. Inside documents, you now have projects. KodeCamp 2.0. Yeah. So I'm going to create a folder and I'm going to call it intro to JS. All right. And I'm going to open this with my VS Code. All right. So inside here, I'm actually going to set up everything the way I'm going to do my CSS, going to do my index.html. I'm going to do my you're so wonderful. I am question. Okay, so CSS, JavaScript, and then index.html. So here now, inside here, I'm going to create a file. I'm going to call it app.js. And then in my index.html, I have this. I'm going to do a HTML. All right. So I'm just going to call it intro HTML. Yep. Just going to do a H1. It says welcome. I can spell welcome to Okay, yes. Now let me save this. Not breakfast, actually. Save this. Well, I just want this to be on the use list so that we don't get confused about it. So, in suite, yes, it's actually good. I think you need to do this. Okay, so I have welcome to JavaScript. Yes. I don't want us to get confused. I want our brains to be sharp for this because JavaScript has its ups and its downs. So yeah, I want us to actually have a good footing. Okay, so we have welcome to JavaScript here. So like we said, there are different ways of adding your JavaScript here. So it's either you're doing something here, you're doing a what do they call it, a script tag. So I'm just going to do scripts. And I'm going to say, okay, forget my pilots. It had an early breakfast. So yeah, it's under the weather. So inside here, now we want to output something. Let's say we want to change. Let me give this a class now. I am calling it. So I'm just calling it first. So inside here now, I am going to do a document. Get no query selector. And I am going to do. Not allow this thing to confuse you. I'm going to do a first. First. And then I am going to do inner HTML is equals to so if I come to my website, what should I be expecting? Okay. So let's see, we are having a B issue here. Query selector, we're selecting first. This is up here. So what if we do this? Did you notice what happened now? Can somebody tell me what happened? Can somebody notice what happened? Can you tell me what happened? Does anybody want to go? Okay, okay. Who has his hand up? Or love it, yeah.
Okay. Normally in HTML, the code is run from top to bottom. So when it was going through the code just now, it ran the script first before it got to that part that had the web HTML, the initial test you get. So it was not able to select the class because it has not gotten to that point yet. So it was when you brought the script tag down that it ran the initial test before it was able to change it to the one in the script.
Yeah. So yeah, Nigeria from top to bottom. All right. So what? Yeah. So what? Love it said. Oh, now that I have TH at people's at the back of people's name. Stop off. confusing me this morning. Okay, so the codes actually run from top to bottom. So when it came here, it saw that this script tag was at the top here. Let's try something. Sound the test sound. Okay, so when it got here initially, it ran this first of all and said, okay, if I see this class, I should change it to this. But this class was not available yet. So it could not change it. So it was after this one had finished, it now started running this. And then this had to now retain its value since then the JavaScript had already finished. So it also tells us that you want to place your script file. So the best place to actually do that is at the bottom. That's just before the body. So that any style that you do, your HTML codes will actually be ready before you inject your script inside it. So this is more like a kind of best practice for you to follow when you're adding your script style. So this is like internal JavaScript. I'm doing it inside this page. So that is what happens. Now, imagine that I had more stuff here, had more HTML code, or I had like my whole fin suite design here. Man, this whole page will just be jammed. It will just be full of a whole. Yes. It's placed at the bottom now. The JavaScript for Bootstrap is it not at the bottom? Place it at the bottom. So your HTML actually loads up first, and then the CSS, and then your what do they call it? Your JavaScript now follows. So that's what happens actually. So if we had that the whole of fin suite here, how many lines of HTML code, and then inside it now you're now squeezing to put the script inside it. Think about it. Think about your life. Yes. So you need to think about what you're doing. Like you don't want somebody to be able to read your code or what. So you need a better approach to handle that. And in doing that, we can now instead of doing this inside here, we can copy this, cut it out, and now place it inside my app.js, which I now have to link here. So if I am doing this, I'm still using my script stack, but this is what I am doing. I'm doing a SRC. I'm not using a link now. I'm using a source, and I'm targeting my JavaScript. I'm putting a slash and targeting my app.js. So this still works. So I am using an external JavaScript file now inside my JS folder. So I have been able to separate concepts. So I just have this, which is not affecting this. Somebody can just read my whole HTML and does not have any problem. When the person just comes in, so we have the JavaScript folder that inside it, we now have this, we now have the app.js, which has this. So it's easier to read. It's easier because you're separating concepts. Your name is this actually. So, this square will now start when you start squinting his eyes. Okay. so I hope we do get this picture. We get what I am saying here. You understand what I mean? I want us to actually start. I want us to start on a good footing because when you start out well, you won't really have problems with this. So the next thing to look at now is how do you write into HTML? Yeah, how do you display data or how do you output stuff using JavaScript? So we've looked at a couple of them. We've looked at inner HTML. So we're able to write, we're able to do this, we're able to change stuff using inner HTML. So I don't think that one is new. So we can have another one. Remember, I told you your page is like a document. So I'll do a document dot write. Okay, so document dot write. Let's check. What do we have now? Someone will tell me the difference. Okay, so this above. Okay. So we have this, then the yellow world is coming here. All right, let's try this out somewhere. This is flashing. This is different from what I have in mind. So let me show you what I really have in mind. So we have this script here, and I want to do a document, right? And then I want to do this. So sorry. Sorry. Give me a moment. Trying to figure out. Okay, so it's really. So if I remove this, I'm actually expecting this to be different, and it is just adding this. No, it's actually supposed to clear this whole document and just show only hello world, and this is coming up. So except there is an update that I don't know. Yeah, it's actually supposed to overwrite everything, but this is so different. This is normally you didn't need to do this. Okay, so all right, so you can actually use document.write, but this is actually giving me something different from what I expected. Except there's an update which I am not aware of. When you use document.write, it actually clears your whole document and leaves just a new message that you want to put in. But I am not getting that vibe here. So it's actually, yeah. So let's just have that one at the back of our mind. I'll figure out why that is not working. So that is document.write. You can also use alerts. So let's look at alerts here. Alerts. So let me add this window alerts. So when your page comes up, this is supposed to give you, yeah. So it gives you a pop-up like this. So if you reload your page, the pop-up comes up, then the other is. So you're able to use alerts. So for those people that, yeah, actually worked on something recently, maybe the time will actually get to do that. So if you have an error message, you could actually just throw an alert so that someone knows why something is not working. So this window is like this window. It's like this is a window. So it's actually picking an alert from it. So alternatively, you can just skip that. You can just use alerts directly instead of adding the window. It still works. I reload, still comes up. So you can use alerts to output data. You can style the alert. What you can do is you can create your own, how you want your own alerts to be, and then use your, what do they call it? That's you creating the HTML and CSS, and then use your JavaScript to now pass the value that you want it to show, whatever you want it to show. Let's say, for instance, somebody is trying to search for something, and then maybe the value that that person is trying to show is not there. So you want to like say, okay, item not available or something. So you can now pass the name of the item that the person wrote and then say, so item is not available, that kind of stuff. So you get the value from the user, what the user typed, and then you're now displaying it inside your alerts box, and then you're now showing that maybe bananas or something. So you're like, bananas are not available on this site. So that kind of thing. Well, I think you can actually pass an image. It depends on whatever you want to output. You can pass an image actually. You can pass an image instead of just text. It depends on what is coming out. Yeah, there's no difference between both of them. Window is just like, it's just like you targeting the parent object and then or going direct. So you see that when we are doing nesting stuff in styling CSS, that you want to target a particular thing. Let's say, for instance, the H1, that you have to call the name of the class of the div first before you now go to the H1. So it's more like what is happening here. So you have alert. Alert is like the direct child that we need, the child itself. Then window is like the parent. You're now saying the parent, and then you're going directly for the child. So that's what happens with window.alert. So you can use alert instead. See alert. That's basically what happens. What happens there? Then, so I hope we understand that. I hope we understand that. Do you understand how alert works now? Okay. So the other one is you can also write into the browser console using console.log. So inside here now. So I'm doing all of this inside within this place. So I'll move it and I'll move it to where. So now there's a function called console.log JavaScript. So you use this to actually print out stuff. Use this to pass. So let's say, for instance, now we want to say hello. Okay. Okay. So I come to my page. This alert shows. I click OK. And then we are supposed to now check the console. When you check the console, you see that we now have hello, love it. Hello, love it. And that is coming, and that is coming from number 15, line number 15. Some people have started bringing in their accounts. All right. So whether Python or whether JavaScript, they all have their use cases, whether fun or no fun. JavaScript is flexible. Python is this. I don't. There's always that argument. Yes, there's always that argument. Whether Python is cool or this or that, whether it's better than JavaScript. So it all depends on you. It all depends on your preference. So I'm a JavaScript person, so I still use my JavaScript. All right, so let's not drag in the language words. Yes. So console.log. So we've done this hello love it. Yeah. So the semicolon here is actually, so yeah, I was actually going to talk about it. You just want to separate this. You can actually leave this off. Those people that use Python, they know that if your indentation is off or if your this thing is off, you will start having errors. So it's kind of rigid. But on my console.log, yeah, it closes the statement, but it's not very strict. Yeah. I can decide to just do console.log here, save my stuff, and just go back to my page and click on OK. Hello love it will still show up on line 77. I can decide to adjust this, use tabs, push it to the ends of the ends, and save it. And if I reload and check again, hello love it still shows. But we're using Python. If you jones around like this, they will just clear you. So, well, JavaScript is forgiving for a couple of things. So, well, that's why we also have TypeScript, which is more strict than it's more strict than the normal JavaScript. That's why we have different flavors. Yeah. So we have this console.log here, and then we'll be using. Thank you. So So yeah, so I'm copying it and I'm putting it inside this place. Let me just bring everything down. I'll just paste it. So this is what we've been doing so far. Same thing. I hello Lovett is still here. Everything is just same way. So we've talked about different ways of outputting stuff. TypeScript. So there are a whole lot of questions. But let me just stop. TypeScript is strict, is more strict than JavaScript. Just so you know that we'll actually talk more about that. Let's just go on with what we have today. So we've looked at these different ways, the different ways of actually outputting data here. So that's what we've actually, it's still JavaScript. Yeah, it's just like the, well, what I say, pan milk and it's just different flavors. Okay, I'm seeing an interesting question here. I still don't get the importance of console since it doesn't show up on your page. Now, when you have errors, when you have an error, it actually shows up in your, it shows up in your console that something is broken. So the console is a good place to actually see errors from your website. And aside seeing errors, you can also use it. You saw that we're playing around with things. So you can actually use it to test some of your codes first before putting them into your actual code. Okay, so okay, so that's the beauty of this interface. Let's do a moment. So, okay, so yeah. All right, I think we're done. All right, so we have the next thing that we have to look at is JavaScript statements. So, like we've been learning in school, that you actually tell your computer what to do using a set of instructions. So a computer program is a list of instructions to be executed. Let me increase this. So it's a list of instructions to be executed by a computer. In programming language, these programming instructions are called statements. So something like this, you're instructing your computer to actually do something. You're saying, get this element that has an ID of demo, and then change the inner HTML and give it hello Dolly. So you're passing, this is a statement. This is a statement. And you're telling your browser to actually do this. So that's like, it's just what it is. So a JavaScript program is a list of programming statements. So you just give instructions on what to do. Have a button. So I think I'll just try that for us so that we just see what happens. So you have a button that when you click on it, it just says good morning. So you're actually passing an instruction on what to do. So JavaScript statements are composed of values, operators, expressions, keywords, and comments. So in JavaScript, we also have comments, which we actually will look at, and then we get the picture. So like here now, we understand what is happening here. So we are changing the inner HTML hello Dolly. So that's what is happening here. So let's just do one thing. This is a bit advanced, but we'll actually just get these pictures. I want to write a function. A function is like is a code that does is a code that actually is a block of code actually that performs a particular function. So it does a particular thing. So I want a code that will actually say good morning when you click on a button. So I'm going to say greeting. I'm going to call the function greeting. Okay. So I want good morning everyone. Okay. So if I have something like this, so I need to comment this alert. I don't want it to trigger any distance. So I want to create a button here now. Same button, and I'm saying greet everyone. So we have something called an event listener. So when you click a button, you're actually doing something. When you reload a page, you're doing an event, something is happening. So we have things that listen for events, something like on click. So on click, we want to call that function greet. What did I say? Greeting, right? Yeah. Saving this. So it's actually picking, it's supposed to pick this greeting and then run this command that is inside here. So it comes, does this one, does this one, does all of them, comes to this one now. And now when you click on it, it should show us this. So let's see how this goes. So I have this. If I click on it, greeting is not defined. What do I call that function? Okay. Quick. Oh, I did not link this here, sorry. I just changed script. It's RC, it's pointing to the JS, and then applet. See what is happening. So we actually wrote the instructions which was followed. Can we hear me? Okay, yeah. So we have a function. A function is a block of code. So we want, when you click on that button, it says hello everyone. And then the name of this function is what? Greeting. So we are now calling this function here, greeting, and then you pass a bracket. So this is how you call a function in JavaScript. So we are saying on click of this button, run the code that is inside this greeting, which is what is happening here. So function and then the function name. When you click on it, it now alerts hello everyone. So is anybody confused with that or about that? talk about functions in coming weeks. So do we understand this? Yeah, I've done that. If you reload this page, you click on greet everyone, it brings hello everyone. This is the output. It's an alert. So we are writing it inside an alert box. Yes, a function can do more than one. So do we get this? Do we get this picture? You understand what is going on now, right? Okay. Okay, so the last things to talk about today. So things that you need to note, JavaScript ignores multiple spaces, like I already showed you. If you like, give a whole lot of space, just pick what it needs. Yes, okay. Yeah, text content. So this is an interesting question. So you have text content and then you have inner HTML. So instead of using inner HTML here, I can also use a text content. This actually gives you, it affects the content. This is welcome home, right? This is what we have inside here. Welcome home. Welcome. Welcome, Frank. So you can use text content to do it. You can use inner HTML. So it's like almost the same thing. It's almost the same thing. Almost the same thing. Okay, okay. Everybody wants their name to show. Yeah, it selects the text. Yeah, so that's what happens. Thank you. Well, I hope you're satisfied. Ah, kind of. I hope you're satisfied now. Yes, see your name here. Thank you. All right. So we talked about space. Then your JavaScript line length. So JavaScript line length. So you can your codes can actually run. You can actually write codes to, as in, yeah, you can write codes. But just imagine you having to scroll and scroll and scroll just so that your codes will move. So when you notice that your JavaScript code is now getting longer, you just have to break it to the next line. Like you just move to the next line so that you don't have a whole lot. So it's like 80 characters. You can try 80 characters. That's what most people do. 80 characters on one line if you have to write long codes. You can break it into smaller bits. So okay, then you can also do line breaks. So we talked about functions, and then you see that JavaScript statements can be grouped together in code blocks inside curly brackets, which is something of this sort. So the purpose of code blocks is to define statements to be executed together. So this function now, we just want codes that will just be executed one after the other together. So when this one finishes, the next one just happens because you clicked on that button. So whatever is inside here will run at the same time. So So that's why we have code blocks. They are usually inside brackets. Then we have JavaScript keywords. So JavaScript keywords often start, JavaScript statements often start with keywords to identify the JavaScript actions to be performed. Example, const, var, let, function, if, switch. Yeah, so we have all of this, which we're actually going to learn. We're going to learn about variables, how to create variables, how to store values in variables, how to store variables in constants. So all of this, these are keywords. We've used this function. So function is actually a keyword. It's a reserved word. So you do not name things using, you don't just come in and name something function because it's a reserved word. So we'll talk about switch, we'll talk about if. So these are like conditional statements. When you want to do if the boy is so do this, if the girl is so do this. So that kind of stuff. So I believe we understand that. Does anybody have any question? I think that's the end of. So I hope it was not overwhelming. Does anybody have a question? No, we've not started anything, so it's not true. We've not done anything. Not done anything. They've not given you task on it. So when you're given task on it, you can't start worrying about it. So, yeah, so it's actually an interesting session. So it's actually, yeah, just go and practice. Like I said, you need to practice. Go to W3 school, go to KodeCamp, start learning things. It's quite easy to get it. So let's practice. And yeah, JavaScript makes sense to us. So I don't think anybody has any questions. So, yeah, we've come to the end of the class for today. Yeah, so come to the end of the class. Let's stop more on Slack. And let's keep let's keep practicing. Let's keep yeah, let's just learning new. So thank you guys for coming around. Thank you for all you do. And keep being the best.